Alright, we are covering the three Saint Triplet countries of the Caribbean, and today we cover the sister triplet along with her two brothers, Saint Lucia. If, like most people, you don't know anything about Saint Lucia, basically, if the Caribbean islands were a school, Saint Lucia would be like...
Hey, back off! She's mine! She's mine. Oh, she's mine. Was that sexual?
Yeah, Saint Lucia is the hot chick of the Caribbean.
It's time to learn geography.
Now! Hey everyone, I'm your host Barbs. As you know, the Caribbean countries get the least amount of views on this channel, so I'm giving them special privilege. I literally went to these countries. Like, look, I still have like my tan line. By the way, thank you Tourism Authority of St. Lucia for contacting me and hooking me up with pretty much everything. So anyway, today we cover the sister triplet St. Lucia, the only country in the world named after a woman. Their tourism slogan is even, let her inspire you. And even the country has physical features of a woman. The locals clearly showed me that the tallest mountain in the country looks like her face, these scenic volcanic plugs are her breasts, and the steaming volcano is her hey. Anyway, this intro is getting long. We gotta move on. First off, the globe, shall we? St. Lucia is sometimes called the Helen of the West Indies because she was desired and fought over like more than any other island. First of all, St. Lucia is located in the Caribbean, part of the Lesser Antilles, which are all the small islands hooking on the right side past Puerto Rico, and further part of the Windward Islands, which are the bottom 5 islands that stretch to South America. It is about 27 miles long and 14 miles wide. The island has about 20 or so smaller islets just off their shores. Pigeon Island used to be an island until it was connected to the mainland via man-made causeway in 1972. The country is made up of 10 districts, with the capital and largest city of about 70,000 people, Castries, located in the northwest side of the country. The next largest towns would be Gros-Islet and Vieux-Fort down south, which actually holds the largest airport, Hewanora International. This airport is where most international flights come into, which is why the country is investing so much in this one town to attract the tourists to stay instead of complaining about needing to get taxis to get all the way up to the hotspots like Castries or Soufrière. Castries has the second and only other airport, Castries George F.L. Charles Airport, which has a shorter runway that only handles regional turboprop and prop airplanes from other nearby islands. The country also has many other means of transport, the largest port being the port of Castries, where cruises and yachts usually dock, whereas much of the cargo vessels dock at Port Cul-de-Sac at Buckeye Terminal, which holds massive crude oil storage tanks that cooperate with countries like the USA, Venezuela, and Colombia. From there, you have 3 main roads that go around the island, the East Coast Road, the West Coast Road, and the Gros-Islet Highway that goes all the way to the northern tip of the island. This whole section here is only accessible by small local paths, many of which are not fully paved or even accessible by vehicle. The country is planning on maybe building a highway in the future, but for now, the number 6-shaped road network is the main means of road transport. Also, fun fact, they are part of the Commonwealth of Nations, and I have to give a little retraction from our Liberia and Myanmar episodes. Like many other English-speaking former British colonized states, they actually do use, to some extent, imperial units like miles and gallons, so there's more than 2.
I knew you Caribbean folks were alright. We're not alone, Liberian Myanmar.
In any case, today most town names and places are named after French words, but have like an anglicized, bastardized pronunciation. Reason being because instead of renaming everything after the French left, they just kind of repronounced everything. So it's like Soufrière,
Soufrière.
Choiseul,
Chazal.
Carénage.
Oh, hell no. I'm just gonna call it Castries.
For what it's worth though, St. Lucia is kind of known for being the love and romance island of the Caribbean. It was voted the #1 honeymoon destination by the World Travel Awards 9 times.
Oh that's romantic.
Why yes it is, Keith. I mean, the resorts and beaches are insanely accommodating. The views are pristine and opulent. You will see the colors blue, black, yellow, and white everywhere, on telephone poles, on cars, on buildings. Oh, and the Pirates of the Caribbean movies were partially filmed here as well. And you can actually see the real Pearl ship in Gros-Islet Harbor. They just kind of left it there after filming.
Yeah, well, we have the entire set of Port Royal.
Yeah, and we'll get to that in the next episode. Stay tuned. And speaking of cool things to see in the country, here is a list of notable spots and sites you might want to check out in case if you ever decide to visit. The Ariel Cable Tram, Pigeon Island, Rizzo Rum Distillery, the Diamond Waterfall and Gardens, Mamiku Gardens, Tet Paul Peak, the horse racing track at Fort View, a ton of churches like these, Castries Market, the Central Library, Derek Walcott Square, King George V Park, the Apostles Battery, so many abandoned sugar mills, but the coolest one probably being in Balenbouch Estate, this monument. But the most iconic landmark of the country though is actually a beautiful natural site known as the Pitons. But you know the deal, physical land makeup, that has to be explained in the next section. Okay, so I guess now I can explain. The pitons are the most treasured and revered landmark of the nation. They are so proud of these two sharp vertical volcanic plugs. Here are some janky drone footage shots I got, and it's even on their flag, which we will discuss on Flag Friday. Stay tuned. In any case, here's the landscape makeup explained. First of all, St. Lucia sits on the convergence of the Caribbean plate and the North American plate. This subduction is what essentially caused the Antillean Arc, where all the smaller eastern Caribbean islands are found. Essentially, many of these islands were formed volcanically, and St. Lucia being one of the most active. The country is over 85% mountainous and about 77% forested, mostly on the inland parts, the tallest point being Mount Jimmy on the southwest side of the island. These jagged mountains allow numerous natural harbors on the edges, which is one of the reasons why it was coveted so much between the British and French, and it also allows small rivers and creeks to meander throughout the valleys, including the longest river, the Roseau, that flows into the Caribbean. The country has no main inland bodies of water, and the closest thing to a lake would probably be the reservoir created by the John Compton Dam on the Roseau River. The country really only has two seasons, the dry season from December to June, and the wet season from June to November. Hurricanes do occasionally may strike, but it is rare that they feel the full force of one. Only two in the past 30 years have caused noticeable damage, Allen in 1980 and Thomas in 2010. Finally, due to the pummeling winds of the Atlantic hitting the east side mixed with the warm moisture of the Caribbean to the west, over the mountains, it kind of creates a miniature rain shadow effect, which causes the flatter valleys of the southeast side to be slightly drier than the forested areas of the north. Phew, yeah, that's the thing you'll notice. The south side actually is noticeably drier than the north. It's weird. It almost looks like a savanna. In any case, I'm getting kind of tired. I need my triple shot of espresso break from a mug that you can get at geographynow.com. So that means Noah comes in for this segment.
Hey, I'm Noah. You can get a shirt at geographynow.com as well.
Art, I asked for Noah, not you, so.
Oh, yeah.
I'm back. Now, physically, as a Caribbean nation, St. Lucia is special in a lot of ways. For one, they are a geothermal island with active vents, the most famous one being Sulfur Springs, the world's only drive-in volcano. Here you can not only stop by on the sides, witness the steaming fountains and bubbling ponds of muddy water that have a pungent sulfur smell, you can also stop by the hot spring and mud bath area. There you can jump into the warm pools, or you can slab exfoliating mud all over yourself, let it dry, and then jump back in and wipe off the mud. Historically, St. Lucia switched from being a sugar-dominated industry to a banana-producing powerhouse. Today, bananas are still grown, the largest concentration in Roseau. But the industry has waned and more people are growing other crops either to diversify the agriculture sector. This, of course, leads us to the obvious fact. The largest industry that keeps them afloat at around 65% of their GDP is in tourism.
I'm a backpacker on a budget. Can I go here?
Kind of. You can find lower-end Airbnb accommodations and cheaper activities, but generally, keep in mind most places of interest cater to the high end. Luxury cruise lines dock daily and visitors usually opt to stay at high-end resorts. On top of that, like many other Caribbean nations, they have a 15% value-added tax on purchases.
Oh, wow. I mean, okay. So you mean like sales tax?
It's basically sales tax.
Dang, California already has like 10% and I thought that was high.
Come here, man. It's like a duty-free zone, bro.
Guys, shut up. My episode.
Anyway, one issue the country faces has been littering in outskirt and rural areas away from resorts. To combat this, numerous recycling facilities have been built by the government, mostly inland by the town of Bexton, which is good because it keeps the land lush and green, not only aesthetically appealing, but optimal for animals. And here's our animal correspondent to explain.
Gary Harlow here. St. Lucia is a reptile and bird paradise. Today, lizards and geckos can be found crawling all over buildings and vehicles. The island is a haven for birds of all kinds like finches and warblers. Snakes of all kinds are here as well, including what is considered the most rare snake in the world, Kues snake. The island only has two main wild species of mammals, mongoose and the agouti. Now, you're more likely to find dogs and cats roaming around everywhere freely. It's hard to distinguish if they're pets or strays, but very often they're most likely strays. And finally, the national animal, the St. Lucia parrot, is the only bird endemic to the country and is a vibrant, beautiful array of colourful feathers.
Thank you. Now, we finish off this segment as we always do. Food! St. Lucia is home to a wide variety of dishes, some of which you can find in other Caribbean states, like callaloo, lambi, pepper pots. I was saying Marvel character Pepper Potts. Some more Lucian specialties, though, include things like cocoa tea, bouillon stew, farine bean and cassava bread, float bakes, and any drink made by the Piton Company, as well as a national dish, green fig salad, and salt fish.
Oh, and if you ever stop by, check out the Fondue Chocolate Plantation, where you can witness the traditional way of making chocolate. You can taste cocoa fruit, which is actually kind of tangy and sweet. And if you see him, say hi to Clinton. He'll show you the chocolate dance done in a massive metal tub, mixing the cocoa seeds by feet.
And that's kind of the Lucian way. They like to make work fun, nice people, which brings us to...
Thank you, Noah.
You are welcome.
I asked you guys, the Lucian geography peeps, what do you feel when you say you are Lucian? And here are some of the things you said.
I would say it's our language and how friendly we are.
Not all of the Caribbean islands speak Creole.
Right.
So you'd be able to tell the difference.
It's paradise. St. Lucian is a paradise place. The talking. You're gonna say they are St. Lucian. The talking is the way we're gonna say it in Creole, like Sakafedio.
It's a must. You must find some way to come to St. Lucia. I don't want to be anybody else. I'm proud to be a Lucian.
You know, I always enjoy someone asking me where I am from, and they'll be like, man, I have to visit this place.
St. Lucians are descendants of brigands, and they were fighters. If they feel something is right, it should be owned by us.
Anyway, first of all, the country has almost 200,000 people and was fought over 14 times between the British and French, more times than any other country in the Caribbean. The majority of the country is Afro-Caribbean at about 85%. Almost all are descendants of slaves brought over from colonial times. In addition, there are another 10% or so of mixed race people, mostly between black and European. Then you have a small minority of Indians at about 2%, mostly descendants of servants brought over from Uttar Pradesh and Jharkhand in India back in the 19th century. The remaining 3% are all other groups, including the native Kalinago Caribs and white Lucians, mostly with English heritage. They use the East Caribbean dollar as their currency. They use the American types A and B plug outlets, sometimes the British type G, and they drive on the left side of the road. Which is funny because you'll notice they prefer to import a lot of non-customized cars from Japan, so you'll see a lot of dashboard touchscreens in Japanese, and the people just kind of figure out what the buttons mean without actually knowing how to read Japanese. I saw this in all 3 Saint countries, no joke. If there's one thing that Lucians can show a deep sense of distinct pride apart from the rest of their cousins, it's the fact that they are officially a bilingual nation with English and their own unique Lucian Creole, which is French-based. During slavery times, the African inhabitants were kind of subjected to centuries of confusion. I mean, it was like...
So, repeat after me, the word is address.
Non. Répète après moi. Le mot, c'est adresse.
Address.
Adresse.
Address.
Adresse.
Adresse?
And it stuck. It has been somewhat standardized. They have a Lucian Creole dictionary. Schools are allowed to teach in both languages. Essentially, they can pretty much communicate with all the other French-based Creole Caribbean countries, and generally they can communicate with the French when they visit, as long as they don't talk too fast. I was told by you guys some popular things all Lucians say is hey, and hee, salop. I think that last one was like a swear word, but whatever, nobody except you guys, the Lucians, will care. The country is relatively well off compared to their neighbors, and it all has to do with the government putting a huge emphasis on education, which follows many methods from the Lewis model. It helped them transition out of an agrarian-based economy to a service-driven one in the mid to late 20th century. It was kind of like...
Oh man, I'm a mess. I gotta send a ton of my people to universities abroad. Knowledge is power and stuff.
Hi everybody, I'm totally more developed and geopolitically on par with other sustainable sovereignties. Want to take a walk on the beach? I just had the sands imported from Guyana, but whatever.
And that's kind of partially how St. Lucia has gone from bananas to luxury resorts. Anyway, that's all the technical stuff. So now here's the fun culture stuff. And with that, it's time for Random Hannah.
In essence, St. Lucia is a country that loves to show itself off whenever it can. In fact, October is considered Creole Month, where all the festivities highlight the importance of the Lucian Creole identity. During the festivities, many fun activities are performed, like bamboo bursting, in which the locals make makeshift cannons out of large hollowed-out bamboo poles with kerosene-fueled explosions. Whoa, that's really cool. We should do that here at Geography Now. Blast things up. The biggest festival, though, would have to be the Jazz and Arts Festival in May. Cricket is probably the most popular sport, Darren Sammy probably being the most notable player. There's even a stadium named after him. Lucians are proud of the fact that they have 2 Nobel laureates, which make them the country with the highest number of prize winners per capita. Just like other islands on the French or French-influenced Caribbean, the Madras dress in the traditional garb of women. The majority of the country is Christian, about 93%, with the largest denomination being Catholic at about 60%. Buildings in St. Lucia are generally built lower to the ground to withstand hurricane season. The tallest building is the National Insurance Building at only 7 stories tall. When visiting, you'll probably notice that most homes are built on columns. And you would think it was to level off hillsides or assist with floods, but that's not necessarily the case. Many Aleutians actually do this because they see it as a future investment. They build their homes as a single elevated unit, as the lower exposed level could eventually be converted into a second rental or business. And finally, as mentioned, the Aleutians take huge pride in their Creole. In fact, much of the recent revival is attributed to Creole artists in the music industry. They kind of popularized and made Creole cool sounding to young people. To explain that, we go to the swamps of Florida with Floridian Keith.
Wait, you have one more line.
Oh, and I'm going here for my birthday. What?
Happy birthday to you.
Aww!
Happy birthday to you.
Oh my gosh!
Do you want to go to St. Lucia?
Yeah, sure, I'll go to St. Lucia. What?
So, Hannah, I have done nothing for you since you joined Geography Now. And I even missed your birthday. This is my way of saying happy birthday to Hannah.
That's so cool! Oh my gosh!
You and Ian.
Paul.
You and Ian.
And look at this Geography Now cake.
Congratulations, Hannah. Alright, so hey guys, so just so you know, Rush is one of my favorite bands, so you know, fair use and all that stuff, woo, no suing. Now, St. Lucia has lots of different musical preferences. Most fall within the general Caribbean group of genres like reggae, Afro-punk, and soca. However, the one subgenre that is distinctly Lucian that all people are proud of would be Dennery segment. This style uses a much faster tempo, lyrics mixed with English and Creole, and usually the words are quite explicit and controversial, but it's played off in a very satirical and comedic way. Like, they are some of the only people that can make domestic violence sound funny in a song. This is the reason why Dennery segment was actually banned from the radios. Fortunately, it was brought back because it was like,
stop it, you punks. You are not allowed to play that garbage on the radio. We abolished Dennery segment to the pits of hell.
Hey, oh man, I love this music.
Let's buy all their albums and invite these Lucians over. We could learn a thing or two from them.
Hey, those are my people, and it came from our nation. Don't you dare try to steal our culture.
in any case, Dennery segment is played all the time during festivals and carnivals. As the Romance Nation, everywhere you go, you'll just hear some form of the Caribbean flair in the air. All right, that's it. I got no bass guitar today. CGI in bass guitar here, right here, or maybe put a fish in my hands while I air slap.
Thanks, Keith. And now we move on to the history segment. In the shortest way I can condense it, Taino native people settlers, Kalinago tribe invasion, pirate settlement from the French, slavery, French-British power struggle, brigand slave rebellion, battle for St. Lucia, World War I, St. Lucians enlist, World War II, St. Lucians enlist, Nazi U-boat attacks Castries, Castries fire of 1948, independence, fall of agriculture-based economy, age of industry and tourism, and here we are today. Some of the most famous people you guys suggested we mention in this episode include Sir Dunstan St. Omer, Sir John George Melvin Compton, Dame Marie Sophia Descartes, Johnson Charles, Kenny Anthony, Chef Nina Compton, all these singers and actors, Laverne Spencer, and Campeche Creole Comedy is a famous group. So there you go, the Romance Nation with a Creole culture, throw in some pirates and iguanas, and that's St. Lucia. And speaking of romance, let's see who this hot girl of the Caribbean is totally dating and into these days, shall we? St. Lucia is a country that loves to love, but she knows how to choose her crew wisely. For one, outside of the Caribbean, St. Lucia is tied heavily with both the USA and Canada, as they make up the largest visitor group out of anyone in the world, whether by air or cruise ship. Business is huge between the two as well. The US company Hess Corp constructed a massive multi-billion-dollar petroleum refinery on the west side of the country that helps assist in the storage and transport of fuel across North America. The UK and France, of course, are still heavily tied with St. Lucia as well. As the former colony of both states, both countries people visit often, and both even have small Lucian communities living abroad, mostly in London or in the French overseas territories in the Caribbean, like Martinique, Guadeloupe, or Guyana. St. Lucia is one of the only few countries that recognizes Taiwan's sovereignty over the People's Republic of China, and in 2007 they formally recognized the state, effectively suspending ties with the PROC within a few days following. The Taiwanese president has visited and investment projects have been established, such as the helping of extending the international airport. When it comes to their best friends, however, usually it falls within their Caribbean neighbors. As the only 3 sovereign states in the Caribbean to have extensive French colonial background, Haiti and Dominica have a special relationship with St. Lucia. Haiti is like the big wild sister, and Dominica, often called Dominique, is like the quieter twin sister that likes to read and keep to herself. These 3 are the independent French Creole countries, and even though they are quite different culturally, when they meet up, they still nod and totally get each other. For their closest friends though, I asked you guys, the Lucian geograpeeps, and most of you agreed the French overseas island territories of Guadeloupe and Martinique, often called Guada and Martinique, are probably the closest. These 3 islands have the closest Creole, they love each other and visit often. Multiple flights and sea ferries connect them, and Martinique is probably the closer one, as they were at one point a dependency of Martinique under the French West India Company. Today, many people have families in each other's islands, and they are absolutely infatuated and in love with each other. In conclusion, St. Lucians are kind of weirdly proud of the fact that even though they have a history of colonialism and a little bit of chaos, they were still fought over 14 times more than anybody else, so they were kind of desired, and they still kept the identity of the Creole culture alive even after all those centuries. Stay tuned, St. Vincent is coming up next.
And I'm going on a trip.